Today we will learn about a heartbreaking and tragic story that happened in India in 2007. This is the story of Anjali, a beautiful young girl who was forced to marry into a rich but cruel family. She was forced to become a dog to serve her father-in-law. In her last moments of despair, she revealed a secret that made her father-in-law pay a heavy price. Anjali was born and raised in Rampur village of Pradesh, India, in a poor farming family. She was the only daughter in the family. Since childhood, Anjali had to face a difficult life, lacking both material things and development opportunities. Her family did not have the conditions to send their children to study much, so Anjali only completed middle school and had to drop out to help her parents with farming. Life in a small village with hard farm work trained her to be patient and tolerant, but also deprived her of many opportunities that other girls in the city had. Despite the hardships of life, Anjali always stood out thanks to her natural beauty. Her healthy tan skin, big round eyes, and thick black hair made her the center of attention in the village. By her teenage years, Anjali had attracted the attention of many young men in the area. Many times the boys in the village tried to get to know her and confess their love to her. But Anjali, who was quiet and modest, did not care much about those things. She always acted reserved, avoiding attracting too much attention. However, there was one person who touched Anjali's heart, Rajesh, a poor boy in the same village. Rajesh was 24 years old at that time, a hard-working and kind young man, but his family also had many economic difficulties. Anjali and Anjali often met while working in the fields or when she helped her mother sell goods in the village market. Their love developed quietly, not loudly but sincerely. They understood and shared with each other the hardships in life, the dreams left unfulfilled due to poverty. Every time they met, Rajesh's eyes were always full of love and the promise of a bright future. But Anjali and Rajesh's love could not last forever. The harsh realities of life soon came and put an end to their simple but deep love. Despite loving each other, Anjali and Rajesh still had to face the poverty of their family. Anjali's parents, although loving their daughter, were forced to think of a more stable future. In the society they lived in, marriage was not only the result of love, but also a tool to improve the status and economic conditions of the family. Hence, they began to see Anjali marrying into a wealthy family as the only way out of poverty. Anjali, despite knowing her family's circumstances, still harbored hopes of love with Rajesh. But those happy days did not last long. When she was just 22, her family decided to marry her off to a wealthy family in the town of Jaipur, near Rajasthan. The decision to marry Anjali was not only due to the desire to provide a better life for her, but also due to financial pressure and connections in the village. The groom's family, who were very rich and powerful, approached Anjali's family with a proposal of marriage. The man Anjali was engaged to was Ravi, 21 years old, the only son in the family. Although his family had a lot of assets, Ravi was not what Anjali's family expected. He was not intelligent, had a low IQ, and often displayed silly behavior. However, the amount of money that the groom's family promised to pay for this marriage was too much for Anjali's family to refuse. They were not only thinking about their daughter's life but also about ensuring a more stable future for the whole family. The dowry, wealth, and promises from the groom's family overshadowed Anjali's feelings for Rajesh. They did not think that their daughter would have a happy life, but in their eyes, the happiness of the family was more important. Anjali cried a lot when she learned about her parents' decision. She felt betrayed, turned into a trading tool in the hands of adults. Her sincere love for Rajesh seemed to not exist in the face of harsh reality. Although Rajesh loved her deeply, he knew that he could not fight against power and money. Their relationship, although not officially over, was torn apart by the irreversible decisions of Anjali's family. The night before the wedding, Anjali could not sleep. The feeling of insecurity and the pain of having to leave her lover lingered in her mind. The words of her parents, the eyes of her neighbors and relatives all weighed heavily on her shoulders. But nothing could make her forget the image of Rajesh. She knew that her life was about to take a different direction, a path she did not want to take. Tomorrow morning she would be the wife of a man she did not love, who she could not even have a normal conversation with. Faced with this prospect, Anjali felt that she needed to see Rajesh one last time to end this relationship. She quietly left the house in the dark night, walking through the familiar village roads where she and Rajesh had shared many memories. The two had arranged to meet in the field, where they often sat and watched the stars and talked about the future. When Anjali arrived, Rajesh was standing there in the quiet darkness, his eyes filled with pain but saying nothing. The two stood silently for a long time, not needing to say anything, because their hearts knew each other's feelings. This meeting was not just a goodbye, but also a farewell to the unfulfilled dreams they had once dreamed of. Finally, Anjali walked towards Rajesh, and in the silence of the field, they embraced each other. It was no longer the sweet embrace of young lovers but the painful embrace of inevitable loss. Emotions were overwhelming, and both knew that this would be the last moment they would be together. Anjali, heartbroken, decided to keep something from her love. That night, in the middle of the deserted field, they spent passionate moments together, merging both physically and mentally. It was Anjali's way of keeping a part of her love before she was forced into a loveless marriage. After a night of passion, they lay together under the starry sky, but their hearts were filled with pain. They both knew that when dawn came, everything would end. Anjali would have to return to her new life, where she belonged to another man. Rajesh, though heartbroken, knew that he could not keep her. Before leaving, Anjali looked deeply into Rajesh's eyes one last time. She engraved this moment in her mind because she knew that this would be the last time she would be with the person she truly loved. The wedding day was hastily arranged, and Anjali could do nothing but follow her parents' wishes. Helpless and in pain, she had no choice. On the day she left the village to go to her husband's house in the town of Jaipur, Rajesh came to see her off. They both just looked at each other in silence, neither of them saying anything, but their eyes were filled with indescribable pain. Anjali leaves the village in silent tears, leaving behind her first and only love. At her husband's house, Anjali quickly realizes the cruel truth about her marriage. Her husband, Ravi, is not really a man capable of satisfying the needs of a wife. Their relationship only exists in name, as an exchange between the two families to achieve their goals. However, the reality is much worse than Anjali could have imagined. She gradually realizes that the main reason she was married into this family was not to be Ravi's wife, but to serve the selfish needs of her father-in-law, Vikram. Vikram, 48 years old, is a cruel and violent man. Initially, he often approached Anjali by showing off his sweetness, trying to seduce her with indecent words and gestures. Anjali skillfully refused and avoided him many times, hoping that Vikram would give up. She was very scared but tried to keep her distance, believing that if she did not react too harshly, he would not dare to go further. But that escape could not last forever. Vikram, with his ruthless and power-hungry nature, gradually became more violent when he realized that his charms were not working. He began to force Anjali to submit, using abusive acts of power to make her serve his selfish needs. Anjali, living in a situation of oppression and no one to protect her, began to lose hope. Her father-in-law was not only cruel to her but also abused his wife. Suman had endured years of oppression and violence from her husband, leaving her in constant fear and despair. Suman was completely subdued by her husband's iron fist. So even though she knew what Vikram was doing to Anjali, she did not dare to speak up or intervene. Her silence only made Vikram more brutal. At first he acted secretly, but gradually became more overt. Anjali lived in humiliation and despair, knowing that no one in her husband's family would protect her. Even the servants in the house could only stand by in fear. Faced with this situation, Anjali felt she had no choice but to find a way to escape. After months of physical and mental abuse, she knew that no one in her husband's family could help her. Even her mother-in-law, Suman, could only remain silent. In desperation, Anjali decided to turn to the one person she thought could help her, Rajesh, her ex-boyfriend. Quietly and carefully, Anjali wrote a letter to Rajesh, telling him all that she had suffered and begging him to help her escape from this hellish life. She no longer cared about the consequences, only wanting to be free no matter what the cost. After sending the letter, Anjali anxiously waited for Rajesh's response, hoping that he still cared for her, even though their lives had taken different paths. Rajesh, after receiving the letter, was heartbroken. He decided to help Anjali out of her predicament. They planned to meet one evening and escape from that hellish house together. When night fell, Anjali quietly left the house for the second time in her life. She went to meet Rajesh, hoping that this time they could escape from all suffering. Both of them ran away together, carrying with them the dream of a free future, far away from all the suffering that Anjali had endured. But that brief freedom is soon threatened when Vikram discovers that Anjali has disappeared. He is instantly enraged and begins searching for her everywhere. Vikram visits Anjali's parents, harassing them and demanding the return of the dowry his family paid for the marriage. Anjali's family, already poor, cannot afford to pay back such a large sum. They are terrified of Vikram's threats and have no choice but to beg Anjali to return to her husband's home to save their family from danger. In desperation and helplessness, Anjali is forced to return to her husband's home, even though she knows that this decision will only bring more suffering. When Anjali returns to her husband's home, Vikram becomes even more cruel and tyrannical. He not only continues to physically abuse her, but also forces her to do hard labor and degrades her as an object rather than a human being. Every day, Anjali had to do humiliating and arduous work without any rest or protection for her rights. For Vikram, Anjali was no longer his son's wife in name, but just a tool for him to vent his anger and satisfy his selfish demands. Anjali's life became more difficult and desperate as each day passed in oppression and violence. She knew that no one in her husband's family, including her mother-in-law Suman, would stand by her. Everyone in the house, from family members to servants, could only keep silent and endure Vikram's power. Even when Anjali was treated cruelly in front of everyone, no one dared to speak up or intervene. Anjali could not endure such a life anymore. Once again, she decided to contact Rajesh to find relief. After enduring so much, she no longer wanted to live in this hellish house and was determined to escape one last time. She secretly planned with Rajesh, hoping that this time she would succeed. On a fateful night in August 2007, Anjali and Rajesh secretly carried out their plan. Rajesh sneaked into the house through the back door and hid in a hidden corner, waiting for the right moment to escape with Anjali. Both were nervous and anxious, knowing that if discovered, everything could end in tragedy. As Anjali was preparing to leave the house in the kitchen, Vikram suddenly appeared. He had become suspicious when Anjali was absent from the house frequently in the evenings, and this time, Vikram once again used his power to force Anjali to comply with his cruel demands. However, instead of facing Vikram's cruel actions, Anjali took a decisive action. She understood that this was the decisive moment. Unable to let Vikram continue to control her life, she mustered up all her courage, shouting her refusal to his coercion, leaving Vikram completely surprised. Anjali's screams alerted Rajesh, who was hiding in the house, to the danger of the situation. He quickly appeared and stood up to protect Anjali. Both of them realized that this was their only chance to change their lives. They decided not to run away anymore, but to confront Vikram. In that moment, the control that Vikram had held for so long completely collapsed. Anjali, with unprecedented courage, decided to report all of Vikram's actions to the authorities. She not only exposed his crimes and abuses, but also revealed how he used his power and money to control and oppress others. With the support of Rajesh and other family witnesses who had feared Vikram, all came forward. They revealed Vikram's cruelty towards Anjali as well as other acts of violence he had committed. Vikram was arrested and had to face the law. He was convicted of domestic violence, abuse of power, and sentenced to a harsh sentence. His assets were confiscated, and his family lost its power. Vikram was punished for all the crimes he had committed. His life, once a symbol of power and ruthlessness, now became a prime example of the downfall of power when used brutally. Meanwhile, Anjali's parents also faced the consequences of their decisions. When they, out of a desire for money and fame, forced their daughter to marry into a wealthy family without regard for her well-being, they did not expect that their choice would put their daughter in pain and danger. They were faced with deep regret when they witnessed what Anjali went through in Vikram's house. The money they thought would bring stability and prosperity to the family became the cause of tragedy and destruction. Wealth is no substitute for love, respect, and affection in a family. Chasing money, ignoring the true feelings and needs of your children, is not only a big mistake but can also lead to tragic consequences. Anjali paid a heavy price for her parents' decisions, but she also found her way to freedom and happiness by standing up for herself. Her and Rajesh's lives were completely changed. They no longer had to run or be afraid, but instead rebuilt their lives from the ground up, free from the shackles of injustice and oppression. Ultimately, Anjali's story is a testament to courage, determination to regain freedom and dignity. At the same time, it is also a warning to parents. True happiness for children cannot be bought with money or power. Instead, what matters most is love, understanding, and respect for their choices.